If you are enjoying this story, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Your support means everything, and there's so much more to come. Now let's continue. The rain hammered against the windows of our Vienna apartment as I stood frozen in the dining room, champagne flute trembling in my hand. 40 candles flickered on the cake before me, their light dancing across the faces of my colleagues, my parents, my sister, all of them staring at Elna with expressions ranging from shock to barely concealed horror. "Thanks for accepting my new boyfriend into our open marriage," she'd said, her voice bright and casual, as if announcing a new hobby. She raised her glass toward a man I'd never seen before, tall, Nordic-looking, younger than both of us, standing near the kitchen doorway with an uncomfortable smile. I hadn't accepted anything. We didn't have an open marriage. My mother's hand went to her chest. My father's jaw clenched. The silence stretched like a frozen lake, cracking beneath our feet. "Elena," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "What are you talking about?" She laughed, that crystalline laugh that had first captivated me 12 years ago in the Kunsthistorisches Museum, when we were both graduate students pretending to understand Baroque art. "Oh, Matthias, don't be shy. We discussed this. Everyone should live authentically." We had discussed nothing. The party dissolved like sugar in rain. Guests mumbled excuses, grabbed coats, fled into the November night. My parents left without meeting my eyes. Only my sister Katrin remained, standing in the kitchen after everyone had gone, arms crossed. "What the hell was that?" she demanded. I poured myself whiskey with shaking hands. "I have no idea." Elena had disappeared into our bedroom with her boyfriend, a Swedish architect named Lars, I would later learn. The sounds of their laughter leaked under the door like poison gas. Katrin studied me with the clinical precision she'd developed as a forensic psychologist. This wasn't spontaneous, Matthias. This was calculated, public humiliation. She wanted witnesses. But why? That's what you need to find out. The next morning, Elena acted as though nothing had happened. She made coffee, hummed while arranging pastries on our good china, smiled at me across the breakfast table in our sun-filled kitchen, overlooking the Danube. "Sleep well?" she asked. "You need to explain last night." She tilted her head, genuinely puzzled. "What's to explain? We're evolving as a couple. You agreed to this openness months ago." "I never agreed to anything." "Don't gaslight me, Matthias." Her tone turned sharp. "You said you wanted me to be happy. You said our marriage felt stagnant." I had said the marriage felt stagnant. During one vulnerable conversation after too much wine, watching the lights of Vienna blur through tears. But I'd meant we should talk more, travel, reconnect, not this. "Where did you meet him?" I asked. "At the firm. He's designing that project in Salzburg." Elena was a senior partner at an architecture firm. She'd always been more successful than me, more confident, more everything. My career as a university librarian seemed quaint by comparison. Romantic when we were young, now merely inadequate. How long? Does it matter? It mattered. Everything mattered. But she simply gathered her bag and left for work, leaving me alone in our apartment with its tasteful mid-century furniture and framed photographs of a marriage that suddenly felt like archaeological evidence of an extinct civilization. I called in sick, spent the day searching, her laptop, phone bills, credit card statements. She'd been careless, or perhaps she didn't care. Hotel receipts from Innsbruck, Graz, Salzburg. Always weekend conferences that I'd never questioned. Text messages she'd forgotten to delete. He's signing the divorce papers next week. Then we can be together properly. Divorce papers. I'd signed no divorce papers. I called Katrine. She's planning something she wants me to file for divorce to look like the one who gave up. Why would that matter? Her family. Elena came from old Viennese money, the kind that built opera houses and collected Klimt originals. Her grandmother's will stipulated that any divorce initiated by Elena would result in her disinheritance. But if I was the one who abandoned the marriage, she'd keep everything. She's manipulating you into filing, Katrin said. Public humiliation is just the opening move. Then I won't file. Can you live like this? I didn't know, but I knew I wouldn't make it easy for her. The autumn deepened into winter. Vienna transformed into a postcard city of Christmas markets and snow-dusted rooftops. Elena brought Lars to our apartment 3 nights a week. They cooked dinner in my kitchen, drank wine I'd collected, laughed at jokes I wasn't part of. I played the role of the understanding, evolved husband, smiled, nodded, made small talk, and I planned. I discovered Lars had a wife, Ingrid, living in Stockholm with their 2 children. He'd told Elena he was divorced. I said nothing, simply collected evidence. Photographs from Ingrid's social media, text messages I managed to retrieve from his phone when he left it unattended during one of their dinner parties at our apartment. Through a colleague at the university, I learned Elena had been falsifying project bids at her firm, steering contracts to companies that paid her consulting fees under the table. Nothing massive, 5,000 euros here, 10,000 there. Enough to be illegal, not enough to trigger immediate suspicion. I documented everything, built a file as carefully as a scholar constructing a thesis. My parents called weekly, voices thick with concern. Just leave her, my mother begged. You don't need this. But leaving meant she won. Meant she'd destroyed our marriage, humiliated me publicly, and walked away wealthy and vindicated. Christmas arrived. Elena insisted we spend it with her family at their estate outside Salzburg, a Baroque mansion that had belonged to Habsburg courtiers. She wanted Lars there too. It'll be good for everyone to get to know him, she said brightly. Her grandmother, Margaret, was 93, sharp as broken glass. She watched everything from her wheelchair by the fireplace, missing nothing. On Christmas Eve, during dinner, I made my move. I have an announcement, I said, standing with my wine glass. The long table fell silent. Elena's parents, her brothers, assorted cousins. Lars looking uncomfortable in a cashmere sweater. I want to thank Elena for an incredible year, for pushing our marriage into new territory, for teaching me about honesty and authenticity. Elena's smile was cautious, uncertain where this was going. And I want to thank Lars, I continued, turning to him, for being so open with us. I'm sure Ingrid and your children will appreciate your honesty too when you return to Stockholm next week. Lars's face went white. Elena's smile fractured. What? She whispered. I pulled out my phone, brought up Ingrid's Instagram, photos of Lars with 2 blonde children, dated weeks ago. I took the liberty of contacting Ingrid, lovely woman. She had no idea you'd told Elena you were divorced. The table erupted. Elena's mother gasped. Her father demanded explanations. Lars stammered excuses, then fled, literally ran from the house into the snowy night. Elena turned to me, fury and fear mixing in her eyes. You had no right. I also had a conversation with the board at your firm, I continued quietly, about the consulting fees, the falsified bids. Her grandmother's wheelchair creaked as Margaret leaned forward. Explain, Elena. The story tumbled out over the next hour. Elena's desperation to appear more successful than she was. The pressure of living up to family expectations. The affair that was supposed to be an escape, but became a trap. You were going to make me file for divorce, I said. Make me look like the villain so you could keep your inheritance. You were never enough, she screamed. Your little library job, your modest ambitions. I needed more. Margaret's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. You will return every euro you stole. You will resign from the firm, and you will not see a cent of my money. Spring came late to Vienna that year. By the time the cherry trees bloomed along the Ringstrasse, Elena had moved out, taken an apartment in the suburbs, started working at a smaller firm. The divorce was quiet, equitable. I kept the apartment. Katrin asked if I felt victorious. No, I admitted, just tired. But I'd learned something in those dark months. Revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's simply refusing to play the role someone has written for you. Sometimes it's patience, documentation, and the careful dismantling of a carefully constructed lie. I still work at the library, still live in our apartment, though I've changed the furniture, repainted the walls. Sometimes I walk past the Kunsthistorisches Museum and remember the girl who laughed at my jokes about Caravaggio, before ambition and resentment turned her into someone I didn't recognize. I don't hate Elena, I pity her. She gambled everything on a fiction and lost. And me, I won by refusing to lose, by not filing, not breaking, not becoming the villain in her story. The rain still hammers against these windows, but I've learned to find music in it.